Hello and welcome to Connecting Consciousness podcast. Today's the 15th and we're hoping that this will be live tomorrow for Sunday the 16th. It's been incredibly busy, lots going on, and you will have been aware of much of what's happened. So I'll do the usual updates and then we'll go on to the questions. But for those of you who like to watch the cat, and he's just jumped down, I was just about to show you the white cat. And he's very psychic, so he obviously didn't want to be on, and he's taken himself off. Isn't that incredible? If he comes back, then I'll show him to you. Sometimes they're like that. They can want attention, and other times they don't. So I wanted to ask myself a question, really, in relation to President Trump's visit. I'd said that we were hoping within the 2 weeks of Trump's visit to Britain that something, quite momentous could occur. The only thing that appeared to occur was the guy who cleaned up Hillary Clinton's computer, the one that she took home with her and had all the state secrets on, and he cleaned them all up, and his house was arrested. He was arrested rather, and the house was raided, and eyewitnesses saw him sitting outside with his girlfriend apparently, and he was in handcuffs while they were taking things in and out. But there's a real important reason why nothing else followed on from not just that, but that 2 week period. Clearly the negative side were anticipating or expecting something momentous to happen, because it had always been a case with President Trump out of the country, something was slated to happen, and as soon as he took all his family with him, first time any sitting president has taken his entire family with him, that really, I think, set the alarm bells ringing. And the big subject here is someone or something has attempted to create a third world war, and that's what's got in the way of anything happening. The oil tankers that were hit some weeks ago, and it was believed it was a mine. Well, we've had the recent, I think it was possibly on Wednesday, Thursday, I can't remember now, but that was sold to us as a mine or possibly a torpedo attack. But there's one eyewitness account which talks about a missile. Now, there are a number of ship-to-ship missiles which, when they're fired to evade radar or attempt to evade radar, they will fly just feet above the ocean. Now, the official photographs that have been shown appear to show two holes well above the waterline. Well, forgive me, I'm not a naval expert, but if you are seeking to sink a ship with a mine, you do it at or just below the water level, the point being that the ocean pours in through the hole and sinks the ship. But the photographs which are officially released show two holes or damage clearly well above the waterline, which is much more in keeping with a missile strike. So we have a situation where we have this video that's been released purportedly showing Revolutionary Guards from Iran removing an unexploded mine. We've got different politicians from different countries saying it is Iran or saying it's not Iran. This is a chance for President Trump to show his mettle and his quality, because the push for a war has never been greater. We are where we were perhaps in the 1974, 73-74 war with Israel. It's that close. It's very easy for that to trip over now and to start a war which could ignite something much greater. So one way he could deal with the situation is to dispatch a task force, a carrier-based task force, which would placate the hawks in the Pentagon or elsewhere, and also public opinion and world leaders, but wouldn't actually lead to a war, because the Iranians would, they wouldn't have the capability really to actually attack that fleet and sufficiently destroy enough of them to prevent a retaliation. So rather than a potential war, it might be advisable to send some military presence to try and keep the balance. It really is a push to create a conflagration in that part of the world. We know who the key players are. We know the individuals and the countries that would really enjoy a war, and what better than to get the United States involved in that, while you sit back and you watch your two enemies, or your two most difficult partners, punch it out. Because although it would be very difficult, the United States would clearly win a war, and so that might be an answer for somebody. So that's a manipulated conflict, so one that I'm sure President Trump is more than able to sidestep. The difficulty is if somebody was to authorize an attack without the president actually being aware of it, and before you know it, you're actually in some form of conflict. So that was the reason that 2-week window that we all had, as people wanting something good to happen, was hijacked because the bad guys were aware of this, and this potential for a third war has obviously just completely steamrolled at everything. I also wanted to talk about the 26 telegraph poles in South Seattle, which just seemed to collapse, and that was very strange. And there's some good video of it on YouTube, and one of the employees from the Boeing Corporation who witnessed this said how really crazy it was. They just domino effect, they all just came down. And if you look at the video, it doesn't seem an object that's been affected by what we would call standard energy. I think that there's a very advanced energy being used. I think this is a message to the Boeing Corporation. Boeing were affected heavily by the power outage. Excuse me, I think there were 26,000 homes that were out of power, and businesses. And I think it's a message to the bad guys that if you're making aircraft, it's probably good to have it so the software in those aircraft do respond to what the pilot wants you to do, and not try to override the pilot. So I see that as a very positive message about something that's at a distance affecting something that's very physical. So I think that was quite useful. We talk about President Trump coming here to Great Britain. He met the Queen. He did really not meet the politicians. Yes, he met them to shake their hand, and he had a meal with them, but he didn't talk business. There was some very important business to discuss, not least the reconnecting of old energies, old friendships between the United States of America and Great Britain. The Queen is the office holder, she's the sovereign, and that means that whatever decisions are taken between her and President Trump, doesn't matter who the new incoming Prime Minister of Great Britain will be, they are already signed up to whatever the Queen has agreed to. And it's an interesting combination now between Great Britain and the United States, as opposed to some of the more satanic elements that are quite open in Central Europe, or just across the channel from Great Britain. I think it was a very positive meeting. I think it sends a lot of messages. I know a lot of people don't like the Queen, but the point is that the message that I'm getting from this was one of President Trump saying to the Queen, this is my vision, this is what I'm going to do, and I'd like you to be involved in that. And I think that that's a very good, strong message, as there are a number of players in Europe that have got quite a lot to lose from a strong Britain and America. So that was that point. I wanted to talk about the 4th of July, American Independence Day, and I've been sort of dropping hints about the letter Q, about JFK, and I know other people have as well. It's no coincidence that the letter Q is used, and those of you who have got Google Earth will have a look at some of the memorials, or the main memorial for JFK, and you will know that it's laid out in the letter Q. Humanity needs something quite exciting on July the 4th. What I'd like to see is some unveiling, and maybe it is JFK Jr. And wouldn't that be exciting if that he wasn't dead, but he was in hiding, and he was put forward as a new way forward itself, a new type of politics. And let's say that there's also some big information released about the Federal Reserve Bank. There is more and more likelihood now of some sort of engineered financial incident, bigger than the Lehman crash of 2008, but more targeted and not brought on by the bad guys, but brought on by the good guys, not to hurt the middle class, not to hurt the people, but to attack the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank, the two great powerhouses that control much of the world. And if something were to happen that were to weaken the position of those two, that would be, I think, very beneficial. So how about this as a potential scenario? I'm not putting it forward as a definite, but it's a potential possibility that something very big is announced in the coming days or weeks, big enough to swing electors behind Trump in the year and a half when the elections come through, something big enough to turn people away from the establishment and to break any trust they had with the moguls of power, the corporations. And let's say that President Trump runs for office again, and he has maybe JFK Jr. running alongside him. Maybe you're looking at the 4 years after that, where JFK Jr., if he's alive and if he does come back, would run as president, and Donald Trump's son run as vice president. Wouldn't that be interesting? So we all know that JFK was a Democrat, but the Democratic Party is one. My American coordinator, so she would know, said to me, look, the Democratic Party of today is not the same party that it was back in the 60s. It's a completely different animal. So if any of this is going to hold true, then JFK Jr. could not come back as a Democrat. He'd have to be a Republican, simply because the Democratic Party of the United States is somewhat removed from its high ideals and high goals. So what we could be seeing is some form of unveiling on July the 4th, something that would reconnect people, give them hope, and show that there is a way forward. And if that is the case, there'll be an awful lot of questions that need to be asked. And then, of course, we would need these indictments opened and actioned. So, we're looking towards it, and I've really got to hope that when July the 4th comes along, we don't just have fireworks and whatever else it is. We actually have some real hard evidence of change and action that's occurring. So July the 4th, keep your eyes open for that. See what comes along. Let's see if the name JFK emerges. Let's see if there's a connection there with Trump, and let's see what happens to the Federal Reserve. These are key movers. Now, if any of this is true, then the best way to derail all of that is to create a third world war. And that's the point. If this is true, and the very, very evil people are absolutely quaking in their boots, the way they would hit back is to try to completely derail the whole process, take the public's attention away, and try and engineer a situation that could escalate to a third world war. And that is what I believe these explosions in the tankers are about. So that's important. I wanted to also thank everyone who wrote in, and there was loads of you. I asked about the nozzles. I put the pictures out and I showed the two nozzles out of the back of, I think it was an Airbus. I had so many people write in, pilots, ex-pilots, cabin crew, people who work in the control tower, people who work on the ground, and designers of aircraft. I mean, it's been a wonderful response, and you all agreed that these were outlet nozzles, one for perhaps water, one for gas or oil or something, but many people said, well, technically, yeah, they could be converted to spray. Technically, they could be altered. A couple of you thought that the nozzles weren't long enough and there would be an effect, but maybe something could be fitted on, or maybe it would be long enough. But ultimately these were nozzles that took from the aircraft and put out into the atmosphere. Well, that's about all you need, isn't it? So that looks the ideal candidate for the spraying. Are the pilots aware of it? No, most of them aren't. If they are being used for chemtrailing, then I'm sure most pilots haven't a clue that's going on. So that was great, and I wanted to thank everybody for your contributions in that. That was good. All right, so that's it. There's where we are. Lots happening, and I need to go over to Becky and have the questions, please.
Okay, thank you. The first question is from Barbara, who says, "Hello Simon, could you please say something about human colonies on Mars? Thank you."
Well, you can't do better than try and find some old videos, whether on YouTube, whether they've taken down or not. But Alex Collier, maybe 20 years ago, maybe longer, did a very interesting interview where he talked about some of the situations that were going on the Mars colonies, and that struck true with me for the information that I had. When back in the very old days of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve left and took the remaining humans with them, and it wasn't just Adam and Eve, there were many humans that they went, and they didn't go in one group. In order to try to maximize their survival rate, Adam took one group of men and women, and Eve took one group of men and women, but they agreed that when they walked they would never be out of sight all the time. They would try and form some sort of pathway or routeway that one could catch a glimpse of the other at some sort. And what you have is a recreation of this with Adam and Eve bases on the Moon and Mars. So these are old grey alien, I couldn't tell you which greys, but they're grey alien bases many millions of years old, which are underground tunnels. And the first thing that was done was to make these airtight for human habitation, and then to build up on that. And that's basically the same with the Moon and Mars. The one with the Moon had to be done with an agreement, the Mars less so, because the activity on Mars is not quite the same. The Moon is still a very strong hotbed of activity on the far side, still used to observe the Earth, and there's some sensitive machinery there. So that had to be done with the cooperation of the different groups running that. In terms of Mars, that was much more from an economic point of view, and there's more materials on Mars which are valuable than there are on the Moon. The Moon is an artificial created object. It's going to be very limited as to what is on the surface covering, but Mars is a real planet, and therefore the materials there are genuine and are worth the mining and worth looking on. To my knowledge, people are still being shipped off from this planet to both the Moon and the Mars, so the numbers have dropped down quite greatly. That's why President Trump is trying to break into the public's awareness by talking about a space force, and what better way to begin to disclose than talk about a force of spaceships. He's not using the word spaceships, but that's where we're going with it. And it's a ludicrous joke, isn't it, to talk about, you know, we need to go back to the Moon or we need to go back to Mars. That's usually an excuse for we need lots of money and we need the public excited so that they can get behind it, and we can raise it up even more money, and then we'll use it for entirely different purposes. You know, since the 1950s, perhaps 1955, 56, there have been nuclear powered spacecraft that the Earth humans have had, which have allowed them to travel reasonable distances. So it's an absolute joke that, you know, we want to go to Mars, and we've been to Mars, we're on Mars, but these planets are fought over. They are certain quadrants or sections which are demarcated for different groups, and you know, if you stray outside of your area, then there are problems. So humans on the Moon and Mars, yes, absolutely, but other aliens as well. So thank you for the question.
Okay, thanks. Gabby says, "Dear Mr. Parkes, your video about ancient jinn and the shadow world touched me deeply. That's exactly what they have done with me. People from occult sects followed me my whole life. I think it's a program similar to the White Rabbit program. They are people from AOR, this sect and other sects. They always told me that I am a fairy and something with wolves, that I must bring the wolf to home. They write me letters. Different people everywhere in my town repeat the same phrases, and it reminds me of the film Dark City from 1998. I was never by free will in a sect, and I don't know why they followed me. I think they put me together with a jinn. Can you help me? I can tell you the whole story.
Yes. Do we have this person's contact details, Becky?
Yes.
Right. Well, what we're going to do when we finish the show, this is a record, of course. When I've done the record, before we go and have our cup of tea, I will ask Becky to email you and to make an appointment, and we'll see you over Skype this week, just for 10 or 15 minutes, just to have a chat, see, if it's something I can help you with. It sounds very much up my street. It sounds very genuine. What you've spoken about, you would not perhaps get out of a book or a YouTube video. It sounds as if you have experienced this. So we will email you and we will set up a conversation, and I will do everything I can to help you. Thank you. Next question, please.
Okay, thanks. Just trying to find the next question.
Yeah, sure. You probably want to make a note of that email address as well.
Yeah, okay, I've done that and I'm on the next question.
Great, okay, well done.
Okay, this one's from Jen, who says, "Hi there, can you offer any help about a worrying problem, please? My grandson, aged 22, who has always been an aware boy, having had a couple of premonitions, etc., at an early age, and understands a lot psychically, has for a long time been hearing voices in his head. His work is suffering, and his sleep and his state of mind. Doctors and drugs have not helped. He now says the voices are giving him codes. He went missing briefly the other night, and we were so worried to see him like this, not getting better. Can you advise, please?"
You may be the same person that I've just been in contact with on WhatsApp. If that is the case, then we are trying to work on that. Obviously, we don't give names away when it's personal like this. But in any circumstance like this, where a parent or a well-meaning friend is very concerned for someone close to them, ultimately you can't make them, and I can only do what I can with the individual. So if the person concerned doesn't want to speak to me, that's absolutely fine. That's up to them. But maybe in a month or 3 months they may want to do that, and it's not really any good putting pressure on them to want to speak to me. They've got to want to speak to me, because if they want to speak to me, then they'll be willing to listen. But it is incredibly difficult when somebody who loves somebody dearly and sees them deteriorating and desperately wants to help them, but that individual is at a lower level of awareness than the person who's trying to help. It is incredibly difficult, but ultimately you're not responsible. In law, a parent is responsible for its child up to age of 18 or 21, depending where you live, and legally there are requirements on that individual, but you can't force someone to do something they don't want. And so all you can do is say to somebody, watch a couple of this guy's podcasts, a couple of conferences. If you think that it's someone you want to talk to, then I will see someone. No, not a problem. But let's hope that I'm already in conversation with you and we can work something out. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thanks. Astarty has written a couple of questions. The first one is, "Dear Simon, in one of your interviews, you said that they asked you to choose between your soul parts. You said that you are 1/3 reptilian, 1/3 mantis, and 1/3 human, and you chose the mantis by your words. Why not the human?
Okay, that's not a bad question actually. First of all, you're slightly inaccurate, and it may be that English is not your first language, or it may be that you just misheard the part in the video where I speak. This will go back a few years, but I believe that what you will find is that I wasn't asked to choose the soul part, but to choose which alien would be a guardian. And I had the choice of either a reptilian or a mantid, or as you call it, mantis. So the human, which is actually a hollow earth human element to me, it's not an earth human, it's hollow earth human. So that wasn't on the table, that wasn't up for grabs, that wasn't the choice. The choice was, who did you want to have as a guardian? The reptilian that I would call Dad, or the alien mantis I'd call Mum. And I chose Mum and the mantis because I really didn't feel comfortable with the reptilian. It was not a pleasant, it was a very difficult experience, not harmful to me or hurtful to me, but an incredibly, you had to be on your guard all the time. You couldn't rest, you couldn't relax. Everything had to be thought through before you communicated mind to mind. Whereas with the mantid, it didn't matter if you made a mistake like that. It wasn't such a critical thing. So I wasn't asked to choose which part of my soul. I was asked to choose who did I want to be a guardian over me. I hope that helps. All right, that's great. And what's the next one, Becky?
Okay. Her second question is, in one of your interviews you said, as far as I know, they could not split the soul. So whose soul do you have? Reptilian, mantis, or human? If you are a reader of souls, then this is an easy question to answer.
Yeah, it is an easy question, thank you. If that's the cat trying to get in.
Yes.
Or just let the cat in. Yeah, it is an easy question. I don't think, again, if you check back, I said split the soul. I think what I've talked about is break the soul, or broken the soul. Your physical body can die, but the soul doesn't die. Is that the white cat? Come on then, you. Come and show everybody. Come on. Because you just disappeared last time, didn't you? And I introduced you, and you didn't say hello. So say hello this time. Hello. Come and sit on there. What your uncle used to do. So what happens is that if through agreement, so an individual can agree to have their soul manipulated, or not through agreement, somebody can forcibly come in, and that's a really bad breaking of universal law. But remember, there's free will, so they have free will to do that. So there are a number of ways that it can happen, but that's not breaking the soul, that's adding to it. What I've said is it's incredibly difficult to kill a soul. It's incredibly difficult to break a soul. It's incredibly difficult to permanently imprison a soul. And so that's the point. And you've asked, what am I? Well, I'm 1/3 Draconis reptilian, and 10 years ago now I went public with that, and I was very clear from the very first day. So this is who I am. This isn't something I'm going to be ashamed of or hide from. So it's no good me saying, I'm a Palladian, because that would be a lie. And then 3 years later, oh, actually, I'm not, because your credibility is just gone. And I've always wanted to be absolutely open with everybody and give my real name and who I am. I'm not one of these people that hides behind a mask or has a pretend name, or you only see a silhouette of them. And people may have genuine reasons for doing that. But if I wanted people to believe in what I'm saying and to be interested in me, then I have to show some trust, and that means I have to show and be confident and stand up and take all the rubbish that I got, not least from the media or from certain elite organizations. So I have 3 parts to the soul, and there's people who've been following me for years know that I turned my back on the Draconis reptilian part, not within my soul, but within the element that was, projecting itself, and so concentrated much more on the hollow earth human, much more on the humanity, and that has allowed me to, connect more with the earth, connect more with the mission, and to just do the best I can to try to alert people to what I believe is going on and get people to do their own research. So I think your questions are a little bit aggressive. I think you're trying to catch me out. I have a very good memory, and I think if you look back, those would be the words that I used. So I think it's a fair question, and I've taken it and I've answered it as honestly as I can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Megan from New Zealand says, "Hi Becky and Simon, gratitude and thanks to you both. My question is regarding the moon and its non-planet state and how this affects astrology. The moon's placement is often critical, and humans align with its power in many ways. For example, tides and the women's moon cycles. Can you explain, please, are the astrology charts connecting with a natural moon before our present one appeared as a space station? Is gravity and sea tides connected to this station or something different? Love and thanks, Megan."
Well, you've obviously done your research well, and thank you. I mean, you really have. The answer is that all of the phenomena, all of the effects that you've talked about are coming from this artificial moon, because it was about manipulation and control, and the original moon was removed because as a traditional planet, as a traditional object, it had neither an evil nor a negative effect, and it was what it was, and so it was replaced by something that could be manipulated, and as a hollow object it could resonate and use frequencies, and placed at a different position from the original moon, by the way. This one's is placed in such a way as it has a slightly different effect, and it's through frequencies and energies that females, their cycles are somewhat linked to it. And we talk about moon goddesses, we talk about so many elements in ancient history or astrology that really call upon the moon to take certain roles. So it's a manipulation device, a control device. All of that's placed in there. So it's one of these objects that does many things. It has a far side of the moon where you can have surveillance or booster stations. You can have sophisticated equipment inside. And I couldn't tell you when this was changed. We talked about Queta Munro and the change where his people, the Zulu people, talk about the original moon being pushed away and the new moon rolled into place, but we have no concept of time. Well, I don't anyway, in terms of when that happened. All I can tell you is that it was part of the overall strategy to control humankind on this planet, and an amazing, and I'm using that word, an amazing program of planning and deception, which is why we're finding it so hard to fight our way out of it. If somebody, as we say in Great Britain, wrote an idea on the back of a cigarette packet in 5 minutes, we would have broken free by now. But this was a very in-depth, well-planned operation, which is why it's such a struggle to break free now. So you've got your research. I think you're there. My answer is that this is the artificial moon, and it controls humans in this subtle way. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Maria says, "I want to know where the logo, in brackets green and lilac swirl, comes from and what it means. I have a stone of glass that looks exactly like that except from the heart in the middle. Warmest regards, Maria."
It represents the energy coming in from galactic center, passing through the earth, converting, and it's about love, it's about change, and it's in the figure of 8. It's the unending, infinity, and the heart being the representation of our intent, but also the Earth's intent. And the idea is that when we get things working, it'll be a bit more interactive. I asked Becky to design that. We had a number of ideas that come forward, but Becky's idea seemed to me to really represent what I'd wanted Connecting Consciousness to be seen. It uses the same colours that I had originally created all those years ago, purple and green, and they've been used, and I'm delighted with it, and it's beginning now to show itself on the different Connecting Consciousness country websites. It'll go onto my website, it'll go onto the international website, and it means that when a person wants to join Connecting Consciousness, they have to either put their cursor, their arrow, onto the heart and click it. On a touch screen, they'll have to touch it with their finger when it's all up and running. And what I'm asking that person is, if you want to join Connecting Consciousness, if you want to access the information here, then you are connecting your heart. And it's a really good test, because if you're an evil person, you'll find that very difficult. But if you're a spiritual person, or you're a person wanting to learn, then you won't have any problem with that at all. So it's a real spiritual test for an individual, totally unlike ticking a box or checking this or moving that. I'm asking you to connect with a heart which represents the heart of love, which is the earth and humanity. And let's see how well that goes. So thank you for your question. Thank you for noticing. That's great.
Okay, thanks. Alicia says, I have been having experiences all my life. I'm really tired. Been waking up with strange marks, bruises, triangular burns. I want to be left alone. I can see different entities interdimensionally. I have been attacked via black magic astrally. I can't figure out if it's my fault, if I did something to warrant this. Never was involved in occult. Mother's side German, father's German, British, Irish. Father was a Vietnam vet. My body has become sore, fatigued, etc., and I believe I'm MyLab. Can you help me?
Yes. It's not your fault. Okay. I have a problem with some of what I loosely call the New Age visions. There is one school of thought which says that everything that happens to you is your choice. You lost your arm or you lost your leg, you must have agreed to that. You see, I don't accept that. There are so many good people that end up being attacked, and I personally don't say that, oh, they must have agreed to all that. What I say is that these people came into the earth to make a change, and the bad element detected them coming in and either sideswiped them, pushed them into a family, or did something so that they could get at the family, manipulate the family. 75% of the clients I deal with who have this happen to them as a child, their parents have no knowledge of what is going on, and the parents themselves are manipulated. They have no clue. And about a quarter of the cases, the parents are in on it. But in the vast majority of cases, it's all a complete manipulation. So I actually think that people come here pure good. They're horrified at what they see happening on the earth, and they want to come here as a star child or whatever it is and make a big change. The satanic forces here spot that and try and close them down. So don't take that to yourself. Karma is karma, but don't take that on. I'm going to guess we've got your email address. Is that right, Becky?
Yes, we have.
Well, what we're going to do with the other person as well, that cup of tea is going to be knocked back a little bit now. We will email you tonight, and it's the same deal. I'll see you for 15 minutes some point this week. Hopefully you can talk to me a little bit. Let me see if it's something that I can help you with, and then we'll just take it from there. Thank you for writing in.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to read out my thank yous now. So I'm sorry to cut you off a bit there, Becky. I want to thank the following people who so kindly have donated, and it's really helpful because it was going to a meeting the other day in the 13-year-old car. Is it 13 or 16-year-old car? 13-year-old car, and it started to absolutely judder like crazy. And I thought, oh my lord, the brakes are going to need doing. It was really quite dangerous actually to put my foot on the brakes, and instead of stopping when it should stop, it was like not stopping. So I want to thank people. I want to thank Isabel, Cheryl, Jane, Nathan, Olaf, Richard, Sharon, Valerie, Pascal, Kiss, Laura, John, David, the Little Warehouse, Margaret, Mary, Lars, Maria, Rhoda, Jeff, Nick, Adelia, Goodmunda, Richard, Candice, Carl, Rosemary, Rudolph, Campbell, Kathleen, Ralph, Gunda, Amanda, John, Texas Services, thank you, Mary, Hans, Patap, Robin, Eric, Leslie, Richard, Manuel, Peter, Marina, Martin, Robert, nearly there, Joss, Drumset and Life. And if I've missed you off that, please forgive me. It's not deliberate. Thank you for sending. Got my brakes fixed, and I can drive without fear of coming off the road. You really do make a difference. You know, it's not a joke. It's not. How can I say? You know, it's the donations and the bit of work that I can get through and do that actually keeps me going. It keeps the podcasts going. You know, and it keeps us on there trying to get the information out. So I'm just very grateful to you. Thank you. Okay, next question, please.
Okay, this question is from Leo, who says, are the alien race of the Elohim related to the God in the Bible or the Old Testament, and what do they look like? Are the Elohim and the Anunnaki the same? How advanced technologically and spiritually are they? And are they benevolent or hostile?
Right. Right, benevolent or hostile to whom? You're asking, are they benevolent to humanity? The answer is ambiguous. Very, very difficult when you're looking back at this time of our history where there's very little records that the public have got. There are others who've got the records, but the public have got. It's very hard to try to define who's what and which hat they're wearing. The Elohim were very tall, very slim, and were white-skinned. And they're not the same as the Anunnaki. The Elohim came first. The Elohim were the first sort of split between what we'd call a full alien and a hybridized form. So the Elohim were very powerful. Didn't use machines as we would understand it. Were able to manifest with the power of their mind. But human looking, no hair on the body, pale skin. In terms of as we're looking before what we call the flood, you're looking a long time ago, and you have several of these groups. Sometimes the Elohim get the name giants. I don't think it's the same group, but the Elohim were quite tall, and they also lived far longer than the humankind of today. So Elohim were not either evil or bad. They had their own. They weren't gods. Let's get this straight. They weren't gods, but they could create. I mean, humankind can create. We can create, but these could create in a different way, in a more powerful way. But they would manipulate. Again, it's hard for us to say right and wrong because we're so black and white on this planet. You know, we have very easy to grasp concepts of what is bad and what is good, and sometimes that's very handy to have that clear understanding. Goodness knows we need that clear understanding on the planet at this time, but you can't project your human values onto something that clearly wasn't human, and it's coming from a concept very different. So would we say that they were beneficial to humanity? Yes, in the sense that they wouldn't want to wipe humanity out, but no, because they would seek, just like all these other groups, to control and manipulate. is a farmer, in human terms, is a farmer good or evil with his flock of sheep? He feeds them. If they get sick, he calls the vet in and makes them better, perhaps. Gives them water and a warm pen, a warm roof when it's cold weather. And when it's very hot, he takes the fur off their back and they're cool. And then he kills them because he wants to eat them. So is the farmer good or evil? So these are the questions that on the face of it seem so easy to ask, but actually they're not easy to answer. And so the Elohim are like the farmer. So look on it like that. And this may generate more questions, and it's a really interesting topic. Very popular in America, the ancient aliens topic. Far more popular there than it is in Britain, but that would come into the ancient alien question. Thank you for that.
Okay, thanks. Lawrence says, greetings and blessings to you, Mr. Parkes. I was wondering if you could elaborate further on when you spoke about eye colour and people with green eyes having been in the control matrix at one point or another. And is eye colour any indication of soul origin? I'm trying to put the pieces of the awakening puzzle together, as it were, and I thank you for your time.
It's great. You didn't tell us what colour your eyes were. It's quite an interesting question in its own way, because the answer is yes and no. It is an indicator of soul origin, but it's also an indicator of influence. So, for instance, somebody coming from the Pleiades, jolly old Pleiadians, I always use them, should have blue eyes. And if somebody from the Pleiades comes straight to Earth, they will have blue eyes. I don't really care what genetic doctors on this planet tell me. I don't really believe all of the things that doctors have to say, and I'm not being disrespectful or rude, I just don't believe it. But if someone's coming from the fourth dimension, then they're going to either have brown eyes or green eyes. You will not have blue eyes if you're coming from the fourth dimension. So let's take someone from Sirius, fourth dimension, higher in the fourth, higher up in the fourth. Don't get mixed up with the greys, don't worry, you're higher up. So higher in the fourth, brown eyes coming here. But you get curious and you want to sidle yourself off into, say, ancient Egypt, and you want to be involved with the occult and with all the magic that goes on there. Now, if you incarnate many, many lifetimes there, and remember that I don't accept, and I know many of you don't accept, the official Egyptologists' version of how the pyramid was built and when it was built. So let's say you could have many lifetimes there. Your eye colour will turn green. If you are in the higher fourth and you come into the lower fourth, so you're not even come to Earth, but you go into the lower fourth and you stay there, and you are involved with control elements, the occult, power, your eyes will go green. That is why there is only 1.8% of the population, official records, not my figures, official figures, only 1.8 have green eyes. Okay, because it's rare, and because it means that you have visited the fourth dimension, the lower part of the fourth dimension. You have witnessed and seen, or your soul has witnessed and seen whatever it's witnessed and seen, and you have maybe practiced, crafting of energies, and then you come here and the soul is that's the element of it. It's fourth dimensional. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, far from it. It means that you have witnessed the control element, and if your mind and your soul makes a choice for good, and I'd say this to my clients, then a fourth dimensional person can bring as much change as a fifth or sixth or higher dimensional person, because he or she who has experienced the fourth dimension has worn the t-shirt, so that you see around you the control element of the earth and you think, well, there's an element in me that recognizes this, and I need to rebel against this, I need to fight against it. So the color of your eye represents your life's history, not just this life, but your life's history, and it is an advert for where you've been, and hence why the elite sort of label people by the colour of their eye. And Marilyn Monroe was always going to have blue eyes. So the elite understand this, they measure it. Ordinary people, unaware, have no clue, they don't understand. And the important thing about eye colour, I'll just finish on this one, is it's got nothing to do with how much money you earn. It's got nothing to do with broadly speaking, your voice. It's got nothing to do with the clothes you wear. It is an identity card that a very small percentage of the population can identify. So if your eye colour is green, remember, you're born, you have a birth certificate, so you've already been checked over, you've got your legal document which has gone off to the elite, and they'll say, oh, this is an interesting person because they've got X, Y or Z, and we'll keep an eye on them. So that's my answer. I hope it's helpful.
Okay, thanks. Boris says, hello, in one interview you mentioned that there is some kind of grid around the world that when one dies deletes all the memory from the human being, and then the soul is ready to reincarnate again. In one other interview you said that in order to exit the cycle of birth and death, we just have to intend to go back to the source when we die. Wouldn't that grid interfere and make us forget where we want to go? Best regards, Boris.
Thanks, Boris. You've probably misunderstood what I've said. It is not the grid that makes you forget. The grid is the trap. It's the prison. When a person attempts to either go back to their star family or back to the creator source, they pass into the grid, and just like a fly hits an electric fence or an electric net, it gets a zap. But that zap is not designed to remove your memory. That's designed to capture you. You're taken to, I can only use the word, a holding station. There was one person who had a memory of this place. Phenomenal to have a memory, and she called it the freeze box. That's her own word for it. And this is where your memory is wiped, and then you return to Earth. Now, in most cases, this is a permanent removal of that last lifetime's memory. But occasionally the system doesn't work properly, or the individual is so spiritual or so strong or so bloody minded that it's only a partial wipe. So it's not the mesh, it's not the net that gives you the amnesia. It is what my friend called the freeze box. It is the holding station, and that returns you. Now, we know that aliens who are quite advanced can pass through the net. We know that people on this planet, humans who have spent many years seeking enlightenment, have the capability to pass through it. And there are people who don't spend years seeking enlightenment and just have it, the skill, and they'll pass through it. And what I've said is that for those of us who don't have that automatic get out of jail free card, the best thing you can do is say to yourself every night, oh, I want to go home, I want to go to Source, or I want to go to Star Family. Because you see, when the day comes or the night comes when your physical body dies, and most people die in their sleep, you will wake up, using the word loosely here, you'll wake up in the morning and you will not know you're dead. You won't know you're dead. It'll be another morning, but what will happen is you won't be able to move your arms and legs. And that's when you think, oh, am I dead? But there's no fear, there's no panic, because you're removed from the 3D stroke 4D drama. So that's gone. And then here's where the trickery comes in now, probably a holograph, something like that. Somebody comes and stands by the bedside to collect you. So I made a joke with one of my clients the other day, and I said, if you were a stamp collector, you love stamps and you spent all your life collecting stamps. There was a guy called Stanley Gibbons who created a stamp album, and a very famous Stanley Gibbons stamp album. And he might come and collect you, or if you're a very devout Catholic, it might be the Virgin Mary herself, X, Y, and Z. So these people are very busy because there are lots and lots of people dying at the same moment over the planet, and then maybe that Jesus is very popular, and that Jesus would have to be everywhere at once. So I don't believe this is true at all. I think these are holographic images designed to play upon your own wishes. And then they take you and they say, come to the light, and you go to the light, zapped, brought back again. You may or may not remember anything. And people say, well, should I go to the light? Conflicting rules here or evidence. And I say, what does Hollywood tell you to do? Time and time again, in film after film, Hollywood portrays this tunnel of light, and you go towards the light. And so if that's what Hollywood's telling you to do, don't do it. Okay, don't do what Hollywood tells you to do. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So the last question of today is from Dana, who says, hello Simon and Becky. May Source be with you and bring you peace and love.
Thank you.
Question 1. Is it possible to send love from my 6th chakra to a soul if it is trapped in the matrix?
Okay, help me out, Becky. 6th chakra. Do you think this person is counting upwards or downwards? Do you think they're starting from the crown and coming down, or from...
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
People normally start with the first chakra being the root or the base, so it's working up, sort of root, sacral, solar, heart. 6th chakra would be the third eye.
Which would make perfect sense, actually. Well, third eye is a receiver as well as a transmitter. I think what I'd say to you is that don't just use the chakra, because I'm a bit ambivalent about chakras, because they can be manipulated and they can be controlled. Use your higher self. Use the soul of your body. Use your higher self. That part of you which is not corrupted by the physical world around you. And yes, you can send love to anybody you want. You have free will to do so. Rather than concentrate on a chakra, because what are you doing? You're saying, hey, I want to share my chakra with you. What you're saying is, I might use that chakra to project as a transmitter, an aerial. But what I am projecting is the love that I have. Someone's sick in hospital, you want them to get better. You could get down on your knees and pray to Jesus, and many people do. Or you could say, I want to send the love that I have for that person, and I'll project it through whatever, and and I want them to get better. So that's my advice to you. I hope that's helpful. That's what I would do. That's what I have done.
I would just like to add that majority of people think of sending love. You connect that with your heart, and your heart chakra, which is the 4th. So it is an unusual question to think about sending it from the head space rather than the heart. But the question 2 is, how could I get rid of an AI implant placed in my right eye? I've also had something like a black spin put in my left brain and soul by 2 greys.
Let's do the eye. It depends whereabouts in the eye, whether it's in the lens, excuse me, or whether it's further back in the eyeball. And depending on what its job is, we're obviously talking about an energy implant here. You're not talking about a physical implant. There are a number of people who can help you, but when it's in the eye, it's really important that it's detected as to where it is in the eye, because sometimes the removal of that can affect the optic nerve. It can affect the electronic part of your eye, basically. So you have to be very careful with that. You said spin. As soon as you said spin, I said, oh, grey. The major problem we come with is with what we call the Orion cube or the Orion box. But the spin resonance is something that the greys use, and it turns on a set frequency. That's easier to get rid of than the cube. The cube is very difficult to remove, but the spin is not. The spin is usually used when the individual, what they're trying to do is to control the individual's balance. I don't mean falling over physically, I mean the energy balance. I'll use my fingers here. It spins at a set rate, and it usurps or takes over the governing control of the person, and it dictates. It's a bit like Saturn, for goodness sake. The ring spinning is the frequency it's generating that, and it's usually about trying to influence a person's whole energy being. Now that's slightly more difficult. I've come across that 2 times in the last 6 or 7 years and was able to help the individuals concerned. It is tricky. The best thing you can do, I guess, is we'll be opening the books again fairly soon, and you just pop on. It's not a matter of life and death. The other 2 people, that's very serious, and that's why I said I would see them, because that to me is life and death. Yours is not life and death, but nevertheless nobody has the right, well actually they do, because they're acting their free will, but your free will is to say I don't want this. So ultimately I say they don't have the right to break your free will, and so they don't have the right to do that. So if you want a book, and I'll have a chat with you and see what I can do, or if you can't wait to see me, there are other people out there, and I strongly advise you to talk to people. Check that they understand the spin. They understand that it's coming from the grey race. These are very, very unhelpful to humanity. Not very nice guys at all. So I can't be any more helpful than that. I will open the books, and I definitely will be able to speak to you. Thank you. So, all right, that was some very interesting questions. We had some very hot updates, very exciting. I know there are other people now talking about this subject. Please research it, watch it, and let's all just do a huge meditation to keep the lid on these very evil people who seriously want to plunge humanity into some disastrous war. Now, we've known this for a long time, haven't we? Their vision of a war, and we, perhaps many of us, already thought it would be in the Middle East. So it's no surprise that there's something happening here, and no surprise it's to do with oil. So yes, it'll drive the price of oil up, which is going to benefit the usual players, but there's a far more serious agenda here. So let's not buy into it. Let's not live in fear. Let's trust that President Trump does not authorize any sort of overtly huge attack, but tries to find the middle ground on that. There's too much at stake here. We're on the verge of something really exciting happening, and it would just be ridiculous to throw it all away on a petty war. Okay, thanks ever so much. Lots of love to everybody. God bless, and see you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.